Hi everybody, it is Teddy Wright with Mayco. I'm the education director, and I thought we could learn the do's and don'ts on how to add some really cool texture. I'm going to get that as close as possible. Can you see how it's raised up and textured on Mayco's um, Jolly Christmas tree? You can get this in either bisque or the mold. In the bisque, it is MB 1462 called Jolly Christmas Tree, or you can buy the mold and create your own, which is CD 1462. Imagine that, Jolly Christmas Tree. All right. So let's talk about what we're going to need. I'm going to show you up close when we get to that point things that didn't work and how I'm going to change it up a little bit. I think it's always great to learn how to get something to work perfect, but what do you do if it doesn't work just right? What are you going to change about it? So I'm going to show you some things that happened to me on here, and I did it on purpose so that I could show you, okay? First of all, what all do you need? You need your bisque, whether you make it yourself with the mold or if you buy it already in bisque. You're going to want sculpting medium. I never know which way to turn that. It changes it a little bit. Okay, so sculpting medium is SG's for specialty glaze 501, 501. Going to need some scissors, a palette knife, and I bought this netting because I want to be goth. Actually, I went to Joann Fabric and bought this. You can go online and buy it. I checked and made sure, and it comes in a bunch of different colors. It is called Nylon Net Fabric, and it was actually number 7200 or 7200 if you go online. I was so flipping happy to get out of the house that was work related that I actually went into the store during the day off times with the mask. I was so excited to be out. So I bought half a yard, which you guys really is quite a bit of fabric, okay? I've cut it a couple of times and look how much fabric you get out of this. So if you're going to do, class or workshop, a half a yard is really pretty good. If you're going to just do it for yourself, maybe a quarter of a yard because you don't need much. Okay. The glazes we're going to use also foundation glaze FN001 white. And to get the vintage look that I was going for, we used SC83 Tip Taupe. I swear I get it backwards every time. The camera flips it a little bit. It's not that I'm just that silly. Okay, so Tip Taupe, Candy Apple Red SC73. And I'll write all this stuff down after I finish with this. But in case you're just kind of making notes as we go along, SC45, My Blue Heaven. And I really like this color. It's one of my favorites. SC9 Jaded. That gave it kind of a vintage Christmas look. Well, instead of using Hot Tamale, I went with the SC73 because it's a little bit more of an orangey red. Most of the vintage colors really are the orangey-ish, not a true red and not a blue red. So that's why I decided on those. Okay, so if you look at my tree, and don't make fun of me, I was figuring this out, but I'm that typical customer, and I'm like that typical like 9-year-old. I'm just like, oh, I'm so excited. We're gonna do a textured tree. So I just started doing the texturing, and I didn't plan it out. So when I painted all of my little waves here, the dancing movement, I really didn't have a plan, and I'm not thrilled the way it looked. So this time, and this is so me, slap it on and then figure it out. I took a pencil and I marked where I'm actually going to glaze. I hope you can see that. So I actually outlined where I'm going to paint instead of just making it up as I went along. Okay, so first step that you're going to do is you're going to get some foundation white and just put one coat on. What I'm doing here is it's going to be an insurance policy that if I don't get some of the sculpting medium somewhere, you still have the tree glazed, and since it's white and the sculpting medium is white, they blend together okay. So any bald spots will be blended in with the foundation glaze. Also, we're going to apply netting into a damp glaze. And foundations is economical and it's easy to use. It just flows on and it dries quick and it's easy to work with. So I chose that first. So I already put one base coat on. I kind of outlined with a pencil where I want my other colored glaze, such as my jaded, which I put it on the bottom. Paint your own pottery. You can put it wherever you want. I just liked that color, so that I don't get into it. Because what I did on this one is I started with all of the sculpting medium first. Well, then I wasn't sure how far to come down, and then I had it on top of my glaze, and it just didn't work out good. So in this time, I think it's going to be better that you mark where you're going to paint it. We're still going to do the sculpting medium texture, but if it gets down into the areas that I'm going to paint with my stroke and coat, then I can take my palette knife, or if you have a cleaning tool or something, and we can scrape off and we have a little bit cleaner area. So some of my areas, all right, I'll show you up close. I should be embarrassed, but I'm not, because it's all learning. All right, look at the tip of this. It is just a hot mess, because I had sculpting medium everywhere. I didn't know where I was going to put the candy apple red. I didn't clean it off really good. But you guys, I did this for you. It's all for you, so that, you know, you can learn from my mistakes. I know, I'm a giver. Hey, Painted Color Ceramics, thanks for joining me. So I have the one coat of foundations glaze on here. What I want to do, I'm going to tilt this down a little bit. Instead of going with an overhead, I just thought you and I could hang together. So when I do my netting, if it's a good idea, it's not working the way I wanted, to lay the netting against this tree and kind of figure out how it's going to lay down. Now I want as much coverage at one time so we don't have some seams. The seams are where I got a little sloppy, and it can happen. So I'm going to lay that here, and then I'm going to put a dart into, hey Don, hey Valerie, my fabric, okay? And for those of you that just started, when I'm going to go back and post all of the supplies on here, so don't worry about, oh, what color is that? I'll add everything. And I'm going to put a dart right here also, so that it's going to go around those little dancing arms and lay down a little bit flatter for me. Oh my gosh, see, look at that. I'm so smart. Of course, it takes like 2 or 3 times. So that darted, laid down nice. Let's cut down another little dart. So, you know, it'll take you a little bit to plan this out. But see, now by putting that little dart in there, look how nicely that lays down, so I don't have any little puckers and folds. So when we start applying the sculpting medium on here, I'm going to have a really pretty nice even surface. So I'm going to do this again, cut this a little bit more so it lays down. And again, if we get the sculpting medium where we want to put the stroke and coat, it will be easy to clean off. How cool is that? All right, so this is just a nylon netting that I bought from Joann Fabrics. You might be able to find it somewhere else. That was just the closest to me. All right, so to get this on here now, I'm going to take that off, pay attention a little bit, which is so unusual for me. And I want to take my white foundations with my soft fan brush. We always use the soft fan brush for large areas. And I'm going to apply another coat on here, because what I'm doing now is I'm going to apply the netting into my wet glaze, because I want it to stick and not move around. And this is one of those things, I'm just kind of, you can see how well I'm applying this. I'm going to take my netting now. Looking for a box I'd like to set this up a little bit higher. And I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to put my cut areas around the dancing little arms so that it lays down nicely. Now on this side, I didn't add enough foundations for it to stick down, so I'm just going to move that up. It's a little bit awkward. That's why I'm saying, you know, when you do your first sample, take a little bit of time, measure it out. There, I've got that in there nice and tight. Okay. And we can fix this. I did have to go back on the first time I did this and cut smaller pieces here and there, you know, little bits and pieces to add in. Oh, but I am happy with this. Okay. So this is an old painter's trick, and if you have done the lace technique or any other techniques with them in a Mayco class where we have added texture, you always take the same color and apply it over what you just sat down. So what this is doing is it's helping it adhere to the bisque so that if you were using a contrasting color, it would not bleed underneath this. Now the good thing is we're using sculpting medium, which is white. And I want it white in this particular design. If you wanted to tint the sculpting medium, our recommendation is to just apply one coat of stroke and coat over it, but you can mix in a little stroke and coat. Ooh, don't do that. Go with the flow, with the flow. Mix in a little bit of stroke and coat into the sculpting medium to change the tint, and it will work fine. Sculpting medium is a textured product to give dimension. It's different than snowfall because it is translucent. So let's say if I painted moody blue, a dark blue background first, and then I took my sculpting medium and put on a design, because it's a little translucent, that dark blue will show through just a little bit. Think of a cameo, how a cameo is solid, but yet you still kind of see through it. Okay, I am doing a much better job this time than I did the first time. You know, but anytime when you're designing the first time and you don't really think it through, it comes out a little wackadoodle. All right, so I have that on there now, which is the foundations glaze. To ensure that this is nice and tight, because I really want to get good textured and bumps. And I do have to say, I'm a little proud of myself. This side is really nice. I did a good job on that. This side, obviously my ADD kicked in, or I just got lazy. Here is where I started blending some seams, and I didn't wait long enough. Can you see how it is kind of flatter? Just because I was rushing. So you want to take time and let it dry. Also up here, I was trying to hurry, and look how it started cracking back a little bit because I way over applied it. So these are the things that can happen, and I'm going to show you how not to do it this time. All right. So happy with this. So by taking your damp sponge, it presses it down, it seals those edges so that when we start applying the sculpting medium, it is going to keep its nice design and texture. Another thing you can do if you want to is you can take a paper towel, or if you're in England, they call it kitchen rolls, and just press it down again. One, this helps get rid of all the excess glaze so that you can get to the next step a little bit faster. All right, that's ready to roll. Now I'm going to take my sculpting medium. If you buy a brand new jar, oh, this one's perfect. Can you guys see? I haven't opened this jar before. There's a little bit of a water head to it. I'll open it up and show you. What we're going to do on this, because I want my sculpting medium to be fairly thick, so I'm going to pour off the water head. Now, you don't have to, but I think it helps a bit on keeping it just a little bit thicker, especially when I'm working on a vertical surface like this. If I was using a stencil on a flat piece, I would probably just go ahead and stir it up and keep that little extra water head on there. But either way will work just fine, okay? This is a little bit thicker. It's almost like marshmallow fluff. And if you're from England, if you don't have marshmallow fluff, it's where marshmallows have been melted a little bit. It's a thick pudding. Well, you guys trying to get the right words. Oh, good, Don. I'm glad that this is timely for you. Sculpting Medium is really a cool product. Now, one thing you guys remember, whenever the product is textured, you don't use it on a food surface. So you're not going to take this technique and put it in the center of a bowl or where the mouth would touch on a mug. It wouldn't be here. You could do it down here. That would be fine. And not in the center of the plate. You could put texture on the rim of the plate, but you don't want to put a surfaced or a textured product anywhere that the food is going to be, or you're going to hit it with a knife and fork because it'll trap bacteria. And since we're not supposed to put earthenware in the dishwasher, it's very difficult to sanitize. That is Mayco's opinion. All right. Okay. So now I'm going to take my sculpting medium with my handy dandy. Geez, I just lost my words. What is this called? Palette knife. I got so intent in looking on this that I couldn't even focus on my words. And I'm going to fill in. Notice how I'm scraping this across. I'm filling in all of this open netting. I'm kind of trying to keep it the same thickness. You see that? Oh, I'm liking this. Now, if I do get it on the area that we're going to add the stroke and coat on my swirls and curls, we'll just go back and clean it up and knock it off. We can either take a damp sponge, scrape it off. Okay, it's almost like you're painting impasto. Bob Ross like. Spackling. So you see that we're going to work this in bits. It'd be really difficult to get this on the entire tree all at one time because of trying to work around the curvature of the tree. Of course, flatter is always easier. I almost feel like I'm trying to ice a cake, which, by the way, is on my to-do list for this evening. I found a really good recipe on a chocolate angel food cake, and I'm like, I think Mama needs to try that. And you can decide how far around you want to wrap this, because I'm going to have to come back and fit some pieces in. So, but I'm going to definitely get this one little wing of an arm here so that I know that I have a good coverage on there. And it's okay if you have it a little thicker. What you don't want to do is have where it's lower than the rest, because then what will happen, and here's a good example. This is another project I'm going to show you another time. See how this is lower and it's almost see-through? I didn't keep it the same consistency or the same thickness. Didn't ruin it, but I would really have liked to have kept it a little bit more on the consistent side. All right, I'm going to come down right here a little bit. And since you have extra netting, you can also, just continue to cut little bitty pieces. I washed mine out so that I'd have it for the next time. You can reuse it, which is totally cool. So once you get it applied on here, the way you think looks good. We're going to let it just set up a few minutes. Dawn's just like, I'm on the diet. I am supposed to be. Mama is not supposed to be weighing what she's weighing right now. But, we don't get to go out. Now, the one thing that I've been doing when I bake is, I'm kind of killing some time while this sets up a little bit, is I do volunteer at an animal shelter. It's Kansas City Pet Project. There's a local butcher, the local pig in the river market here in Kansas City, and every Tuesday I go, and if they have chicken carcasses or dog bones, marrow bones, or what all that, they give it to me, and I boil all this stuff down and I make really good broth, and then I freeze it. So I take them treats. I was like, why was I telling you that? So it enables me to make a cake or something for my husband and I, and then I take the rest to them so that we can have a little bit of treat, but we don't need a whole cake. All right, this has been sitting up a few minutes. Let's test it, okay? So I'm going to start down here, and let's just pull this up and see. It's still a little wet. I don't know if you can, let me pull it up again so you guys can see it. All right, so when I pull this up and you actually see how the sculpting medium is kind of moving and moving around a little bit, you don't want that. That means that it hasn't set up enough. I'm just going to set it right back down. And I'm going to take a little of this off so that it dries a little faster. All right. And I have a fan right here. So I'm going to put it under the fan for just a little bit. What we're looking for is the shine to come off, and then we can peel that off, and we'll continue working all the way around it. So I did mention a minute ago that you can use stencils with sculpting medium, and they look really pretty. It's good for a decorative piece. You can do the same thing, have the damp background, set your stencil into it, a squeegee, palette knife, finger, whatever you want. Run your sculpting medium across it, let it set up, and then lift up the stencil. Don't let it dry too much, because if you dry too much and when you peel off like the netting or the stencil and it's real dry, it chips the edges and you lose that real crisp, nice look. But that works well. You can also put sculpting medium in a writer tip bottle and squeeze it out like it's piping. And that's where it might be nice that if you wanted to change the color lip with a little bit of stroke and coat, you can do that and then do some piping for a raised design. It's really pretty. I like the sculpting medium in a bottle and doing white on white. It's just really pretty. I've seen some beautiful things done for weddings. With Christmas coming up, white snowflakes on a white background would be really pretty. So just some different design ideas that you can use this. We've also done some, like I said, impasto before, where you're literally taking this and spackling on an uneven background and then painting over it. That is really pretty on the clay canvas if you're doing like an Italian scene where you have the grapes. It's really pretty, very pretty. Do you need to replace the water head after you're done with the medium? No. Just make sure that you seal it pretty tight. This first jar that I had opened, I didn't dump the water head out. And you can see, even after using it, it's still pretty thick. We have that gelatin dessert pudding. In England, puddings are considered desserts, as opposed to over here, it's a dessert like this. But in England, pudding means all desserts. Let me see. That's why I keep changing my phrasing. Louise Therese is like, yeah, like slip casting. Yeah, man. Alright, so that was my first jar where I didn't dump the water head. This is this jar where I did dump the water head. You can see it's just a little bit thicker. It just makes it a little bit easier for me when I'm doing techniques like this. Stuck my fingers in it. Alright, let's peek again. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, so I'm going to pull this off. And I'm going to try to do it straight up so that I'm not dragging my netting. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is the fun part for just about everybody. Okay, and get it closer so you can see. So see how nice the texture is on there? I'm going to slowly pull this up, grab this side so that I'm coming straight up. Oh, let go. Oh, can you guys see that texture? Okay, I'm really pleased how well that turned out. So now we have a whole large area that's covered. I do have a couple of spots that are a little raised up, and I don't want to dry it with it raised up or fire it that way. So I'm just going to take a brush that I just dipped in some water and just lightly tap that back down. And it raised up and got a little sharp just because it wasn't quite dry enough. But you can also do it like what I'm doing right now, or when you come back and you add some dots like on here over it, that will also help it lay down because you're brushing it, you're putting some stroke and coat over it, which is going to weigh it down a little bit. So that is how we do it. I really am happy how this little arm got covered nicely. Right here where it's not covered, that's where I'll probably cut a little bitty piece that fits right in there and have it match up. What does not work well is when you try to overlap it. And again, I was getting in a hurry because I wanted to get it in the kiln and yada, yada, yada. So right here, can you guys see that it is really flattened? That's where instead of butting up my two pieces of lace, I got a little overlap, and then when I pulled it off, it didn't give me the texture I wanted. So if you put it on about the thickness that I showed you, where you're really kind of filling in the little holes and not really piling it on, you'll get a good coverage. Right here, like I showed you guys earlier, look how it cracked. I piled that bad boy on and just forced it a little bit too much. So what I would do now is continue going around here. I'll find another, get another piece of lace. I could probably use the same one, but that's going to be ooky, which is a technical term. I'll cut another piece of the netting. I kind of try to stay away from the very edge where it's cut because it rolls over and it's a little thicker, and that is hard to lay out and fill it. But this is a piece that I could easily cut, make sure you guys can see it, lay it right in here and finish this arm off. So I can cut that into a little V shape and manipulate it. This is great for people that really like to get their hands dirty. I had a girlfriend, and I'm not exaggerating, as a child, if they made her go outside and play and she had to get into the dirt, she just sat and cried in hysterics. There are people that do not like to get their hands dirty. Poor things. So here I am. Okay, so I cut that. I put down some foundation glaze. I'm going to just work in one small area right here. I'm going to kind of glue it down with the same foundation glaze again. Press it in here with my damp sponge, and be careful you don't overlap and knock down what you just created. And now I can come back. Oh, I'm going to use my paper towel just to make sure that I'm getting rid of some of that excess moisture. Push it down, and I can work on this little spot. Okay, so I have my, oops, made a dribble. Now here's where I need to be careful. I got a little crazy. I added a little too much sculpting medium right where it already worked, so I may have flattened that just a tad. And I'm going to try to get up underneath this arm as much as possible so that it is covered. I am going to paint solid underneath here. I had marked it all off. For those of you that didn't see in the very beginning, what I did is I took a pencil and I marked where I want to paint. Because the first time out, I was just like figuring out what I was going to do, and I painted different areas, and it really wasn't as attractive as I would have liked. Okay, so here is what I'm talking about, like I just dribbled. I'm just going to knock that off with my finger. I also, if I had a clean palette knife, I can come back and lift that off where I don't want it. That cleans off pretty easy. Then I've got a little drip right here too. I'm going to lift that up so I'm not damaging too much. So I'll let this section set up. This is why I didn't paint all of my waves first, because I was really concerned that I would get the sculpting medium in the areas that I didn't want it. And it's so much easier to come back and clean up the areas that I'm going to add the stroking coat, you know, on all of my little waves and underneath the arm. And you guys decide what you like. I mean, if you wanted to come all the way up, this is just really to show you more than anything how you can use these specific colors that we're using, which I'll list on the comment section, to give it a vintage look, and then to add this really wonderful texture. Now, you're not going to clear glaze this, okay? Look how nice is that. It has that glossy finish without clear glaze. So I did not dip this. Also, another reason is you don't want to weigh down the sculpting medium by adding another glaze on top of it. So when you do your dots on here, I just put one coat. Stroking coat is so heavily pigmented that that's just one little dot on top of it, which I have to tell you was really fun. It's a little mesmerizing trying to do the dots. I started with all red first, and then I came back and I used some blue heaven, and then I added in tip taupe, and then I walked away and I came back and I added more, you know. So you get to put as much as you want on it and how you want it to look. All right, I have this on a little thick, which means it'll take a little bit longer to dry than I want for this demonstration. So I'm just gonna take my palette knife and bring it flush with the lace, and let's peek again. Oh, that turned out really good. Oh yeah, I do sound surprised, don't I? Okay, and then you can kind of go back and clean up a little bit. All right, so here's where I was talking about. See how it's a little thick right there, because when I took my palette knife and I put down the sculpting medium, I wasn't careful where it was butt up together, and I put a big blob there. I can come back, and if with the cleaning tool would really make it easy. Oh, look what Mama has. And I can come back and just scrape around some of those areas to give it the definition that we're really looking for, so that I don't have to have a blob. You can come back and do that. Now this might be a little fiddly for some people. For other people, this may be nirvana, that they can really take their time, create all the design work, and come back and doing the dots. But I have to tell you, I really like how that gives it texture and dimension, and there's no clear glaze. That's all I'm going to do. So you guys can go forth and glaze. I will write down all of the colors we used, and where I got the netting and all of that stuff in the comment sections. If you have any questions at all, you know, just text me, message me, call me. Thanks everyone. I hope you like this. If you do make something, let me know. Post it. Share the wealth, okay? Stay safe.